A very, very good evening and a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. And once again, not from the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, where we certainly don't have art as striking as the piece sitting behind me. And in fact, one of our guests this evening is a part-time art critic. I'll get him to interpret the piece in all its full majesty and tell us just why he likes it. He's not here as an art critic, though. He is here as a winemaker, and a winemaker of some renown, because for 2 decades and change, I think, he's now been the man behind the wines of Groot Constantia. He is, of course, Boela Coenradie, and together with Jean and Flo from the estate, we are celebrating one of the grand old dames of South African wine. 337 years. Groot Constantia's birthday last week, I think, 1685, it all kicked off. And now, well over 3 centuries later, continuing to make some of South Africa's finest wine, drawing from that rich sense of history and tradition, but at the same time bringing a touch of modern flair to both winemaking and some of the endeavors they're getting stuck into, including doing their bit to help solve South Africa's power crisis. How is that working? Well, we'll find out from Jean Nadir, the CEO, just a little later on in the show. We come to you from the Pencil Club in Durban. It is a members club that, if I look out the window, I can see the Indian Ocean sweeping away in front of Mhlanga beside me. This is a glorious spot. I've been here most of the afternoon. Sadly, I'll have to leave a little later, but it's a great home from home while I am down in Durban. We go, though, via Durban down to Constantia in just a moment for this evening's show. Before we do that, though, here's a little bit of news from the wine world. Well, let's kick off with the Winemakers Table event that is happening on Thursday. The wines of Alvy's Drift. Now, you remember Alvy van der Merwe was on a show about 3 weeks ago, and I got a very polite rap over the knuckles for suggesting Breeders Kloof. It's actually part of the Worcester wine route. And our evening on Thursday with Pick and Pay gives you a virtual winemaker's table with Alvy himself. Now, you will have a selection of wines sent to you. And I'm not going to give the game away, but if you do take part, there is something extra being thrown in. And for 650 Rand or 550 Rand, if you're a member of the wine club, you get to join that evening. I will be hosting that evening. Alvy will be joining Chef Jonathan as you learn to make some terrific wine, food, and pair it with some terrific wine. And you get 25% off Alvy's Drift wine afterwards if you're a wine club member, and it's free to be a member. So why on earth would you not be? That's this Thursday. Look forward to seeing you online. I won't, sadly, see you at Vredenlust at the Cabernet Franc Carnival. I shall be abroad. However, you will have the chance to taste some splendid wine. The 300 Rand ticket gets you into the carnival. It gets you your glass. It gets you a food voucher to use, and it allows you to taste all of the Cabernet Franc on show. And over the last year or two, I'm not sure there has been a wine that has leapt into the limelight quite as formidably as Cabernet Franc has. From the shadows of the Bordeaux-style blends in which we normally saw it, we're now seeing single varietal after single varietal really shining. And there are going to be plenty of endorsements of that on the 27th of August at Vredenlust. Head over to their website, grab yourself a ticket, and enjoy. Then, well done, just down the road from Vredenlust to Franschhoek, recently rebranded as the Valley of Dreams. And if you head to the Valley of Dreams, you'll be in one of the greatest places on earth. At least that's according to Time magazine. They've announced that this week, including Franschhoek in their list thereof. And if you combine some lovely wine estates, some outstanding restaurants, the natural beauty of the area, and just the cool factor of strolling either through downtown Franschhoek or through some of the vineyards, you can understand just why a magazine as venerable as Time was moved to include Franschhoek in that particular list. And wrapping up your news, your last chance to win yourself some tickets, or to go and get some tickets yourself over at plankton.mobi. The Stellenbosch Cabernet Collective are in Johannesburg this Saturday. I will be there as well. A pile of winemakers, 20 odd of them, presenting not just a current vintage of Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon, but also an older vintage going back at least a decade. Now, you can buy your tickets yourself and get them soon. They're almost sold out. You can also, though, win yourself a pair of tickets by simply tagging Dan Really Likes Wine on a picture of your favorite bottle of Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon, and we'll announce those winners on the show on Thursday. So there we go. There's your news for today as we come to you live from the Pencil Club in Umhlanga. Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. Today, heading down to Constantia and to Groot Constantia. I've spent a lot of time there. I lived just around the corner for many years when I was still down in the Cape, and it is always a delight to head over there. So let's give you a quick look before we meet three very special guests to celebrate one of South Africa's greatest states. Here's a quick look at the place they call home.
I've been here for over a decade now. Time will pass you by if you don't pay attention. It's here where the smallest things make the biggest difference. Most people believe perfection is an impossible ideal. I don't. It takes years to build a legacy, even decades. This is why I only spend my time on things that are worthwhile.
A wonderful tribute to not just the estate, but also to the winemaker, who's not quite as old as Groot Constantia, but sometimes it does feel like he's been there just about forever. Let's welcome him to the show together with two rather important colleagues. Boela, Jean, Flo, a warm welcome. Lovely to have you all with us. And thank you for joining Dan Really Likes Wine.
Thanks, Dan.
We've got to start with that video, but I mean, you mentioned there you've been there over a decade. It's now more than 2 decades. It's been an extraordinary journey for you. Does it feel like it's been 20 years, or does it feel like you just arrived yesterday?
No, time's fun when you're having flies, huh? No, so it's interesting. I've been here for just shy of 22 years. Jean's been here for also more than 20 years. So it's a bit like Hotel California. Yeah, people don't. It's not a quick stop over. People do stay when they come to Groot Constantia.
And you're clearly there because you enjoy the space, you enjoy what you get to do, and you enjoy the magic of Groot Constantia, which many people have got to experience, just not quite as regularly as you do. But what is it for you about this estate? What is the essence of Groot Constantia that keeps you there and clearly keeps you so happy?
Dan, geez, how much time do we have? No, it is a magic space, and it'll be interesting to hear Jean and Flo's versions, what they enjoy. But there's from a winemaker point of view, I mean, it's quite a range of wine. We're only showing 3 wines tonight, but it's from Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinotage, Shiraz, the red blends, and the sweet wine. And all the wines, the farm's about 150 hectares. From where I'm sitting now, I'm looking at Devil's Peak. So it's about 100 hectares under vines, but it's south-facing and north-facing, and you've got a bit of east-facing, from 40 meters up to 240 meters. So with all the different soil types and altitudes and aspects, there's so many different little pockets on the farm that allow us to make all these different styles of wine and really sort of make it very well. So yeah, it really is from a winemaking point of view. It really is. There's a lot to play with. There's a lot to keep us busy.
And it affords you wine to celebrate with in terms of what you make and you produce. And I'm going to come back to some of that wine a little later on in the show. You've also been celebrating a birthday, Jean. 337 years. I think we sometimes forget just how old and established some of our top vineyards and estates are. Take us back 337 years, not personally, obviously, but to start to the history of this estate. How did Groot Constantia come into being?
Yeah, Dan, it was started by Governor Simon van der Stel, who was at that stage a VOC employee. And this land was granted to him. And, Boela mentioned about the terroir. At that stage, he could have chosen land anywhere, but he chose this piece of land because it's been special, and it's been proved 337 years later still to be very special. He had some vision when he chose this special piece of land. And just to put some perspective into it, Boela mentioned about the 22 years that he's been here. I've been here 20 years this year, and that is only 16% of the lifespan of this estate. So for us, it's a massive responsibility to steer this ship that's been on the ocean for so long, even though it's only 16% of the time. But to keep it afloat, it's a challenge and a massive responsibility. Our aim is to keep it afloat for another 300 years at least. And just for this place to have survived for that long, you can really say sustainability is part of our DNA.
To have gone for those 3 centuries means it must have something special. Boela gave his thoughts on that. What for you has given Groot Constantia this longevity, allowed it to flourish as it has?
Dan, you have to bring it back to the terroir. That's the only thing that haven't changed over the years. And hopefully it will not change significantly in future. But that is the most important thing about Groot Constantia. It's the terroir. It's just the type of wine we make. It's the consistency in which we are able to make it. It's a very versatile estate. We produce a very wide range of wines, and we get accolades across the whole scope of the wines we produce. So, for me, that's the most special thing. It's the terroir.
Well, let's ask the viticulturalist about that terroir. Is that something you'd instantly agree with, Flo, that there is a magic to the ground beneath your feet when you're at Groot Constantia that has allowed Boela and those who came before him to make such consistently fine South African wine?
Then, the word terroir is obviously very important, and I hear what John said, but and it's true. But to be quite honest, it's actually more than the terroir. I think Groot Constantia is absolutely this God-given special vineyard site, and the climate. You stand on this farm, and you got this huge mountain range on your back, and you're looking straight into False Bay. Okay, we can have a huge debate if it's the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean, but you've got this water mass that influence this vineyard and cool it down by night. So, and then, lastly, but most importantly for me is the soil. It's so important with this soil that we got some of the oldest soils in the world, if compared to some of the vineyards in Europe, for instance. And that's what we have to protect. Because you know what, if we don't just destroy the soils by all moderating things like chemicals and whatever, and we don't protect it the natural way, we won't, as John said, we won't have it here in 300 years.
And I know that's a big part of not just what you do, but the philosophy of the whole estate, Flo. I think you work with the WWF in terms of creating a space that is in as much harmony with nature as you can make it. How does that fit into your personal philosophy? And from there, the challenge of running a place the sheer size of Groot Constantia?
I try not to smile, but we're very, very proud of our BWI status. We worked very hard on it. It took us about 7 years to achieve this award and to be part of the champion status. But you know what? There was a lot of time and effort put into it from the whole team, and we actually start firstly with the animals. What can we do? The wildlife, and we install like owl boxes. We got like T poles on the farms for the buzzards. We got like a small little falcon that you see a lot on the farm, and then we start with the vegetation. We tried to, after the big fire that we have in 2015, it was an ideal time for us to take and remove a lot of the aliens. I'm talking about the gum trees and the pine trees. And, by removing this, you give more space for the natural habitat like the fynbos to grow. And what's so interesting, if you read up about these things, fynbos, when it burns, say for instance, there must be another fire that we hope not soon, but it burns easily. It burns at a very low temperature, and for it to grow after the fire is so easy because sometimes the Cape fynbos almost need some fire. And then, as everybody knows, that being in the Cape, we had this huge drought. And what we realized is we could get away with far less water that we were using. And even in our vineyards. And that was just part of it to help us to achieve this award. It wasn't only that from the human side that we do a lot of changes and try to be more friendly to nature. Nature actually itself helped us to achieve this bigger achievement.
And it's one that you're not alone in doing. You're very much a leader in this space, but it's something, Jean, that we're seeing more and more in South Africa, where this awareness of the environmental impact wine can have versus what it perhaps should have is being appreciated a lot more. But I think it's not something anybody really seems to be doing for show. It's the right thing to do, but it's also become something that I think, Jean, it makes business sense because consumers are looking at this and saying, right, I want to support estates like this. And I think from people I've spoken to, you're actually able to deliver something that is not just environmentally friendly, but also works for you from a financial model.
Yeah, Dan, it's ironic. If you look at an estate like Groot Constantia, it's all about the history and the past. But if you look at the estate surviving the last 337 years, it was all about change. It was all about adapting to a world that changed dramatically over the last 300 years. We had a population explosion. We had an energy explosion, information, technology, and all of that. And you know, whenever we do something on the farm, people would ask, is it historically correct? And the only thing about Groot Constantia that's historically correct is actually change. If this farm didn't change in this 337 years, it wouldn't have been here today. So change is a massive thing at Groot Constantia. And implementing technology, like for instance now, solar power, it's a technology implementation. That's basically what it is. It's a step forward. It's in line with sustainability, and it's perfectly aligned with keeping us alive and well for the next 300 years and even longer than that. So we have partnered with a company, Sun Exchange. They do crowd financing, where they get people across the globe to invest in projects like this. It's good exposure for us as well. It gives people in Norway and the Scandinavian countries where they don't have sun, it gives them the opportunity to do their bit to finance solar plants. And that's what we're doing. It's a new project which will be hopefully up and running by the end of August, beginning of September, ready to make full use of the summer sun coming soon.
It's a fantastic project on so many different levels. And just to clarify there, this is something that other people can invest in, John?
Dan, it's open to the public, so they can. And I think there's still, the last reports that I've heard, that we were just over 60% financed. So there's still opportunity for people to invest, yes.
And invest in not just the estate, but by extension, the wine of Boela Coenradie. And we're going to try some of that wine in just a moment. But I'd like to take you back, though. If you look over these 22 odd years that you have been at the helm as part of the 337 years in all, what's changed for you from a winemaking perspective if you look back 20 years ago to what you were making then, what the style of wine was like, what the challenges were like, versus what you find in 2022?
Dan, there are quite a few things changed. I think for Groot Constantia specifically, I remember, like I said earlier, Jean arrived about a year after I did, and coming from a farming background himself. John's from a vineyard, from a wine farm in Worcester. I think we all knew that the vineyards had some work to do, and I think John knew that the best way for Groot Constantia to get out of, because I think Groot Constantia was not on the par that we would have liked it to be. And there was a big investment in the vineyards. And I think in the last 20 odd years, we basically replanted the whole farm, except for one Muscat, Groot Constantia vineyard below the manor house. The whole farm has been replanted. So for me, working with cleaner, healthier vineyards, that makes a massive difference. It makes my life a lot easier in the winery to get the clean, healthy material. I think from a farming point of view, it's quite interesting. I remember I just started at Groot Constantia, or just before I started here, when the South African Wine and Spirits Board introduced the IPW, the Soul, and you'll see on the bus tickets, can you see it, that integrated and sustainability certified, and that was I think it was 97, 98, and we I think all the winemakers at the time thought, it's a bit of a pain in the derriere, but it's amazing, Dan, how the last 25 years how all winemakers embraced it, and now all of a sudden it's not like something that we have to do, it's something that we want to do. Flo also touched on that earlier. It's not 25 years ago. It's like this. It's really, do we really have to? And it's like there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through to get this sustainability thing. Even though I think a good 70 or 80%, if not close to 90% of the vineyards in the country has it. So I think the mindset of the farmers and the winemakers changed over the last 20 plus years that we realize, we're all in this together, and sustainable farming is definitely very important in a part of our business. And then from a winemaking point of view, it's interesting. We just came out of economic isolation in the early 90s, and I think a stylistic point of view, I think I'm talking about the South African, most of the winemakers, we looked after economic isolation. We probably looked at Australia and the US as outside Europe, successful countries. And I think personally, I definitely did. I still remember from our first vintages, very high alcohol, lots of new oak, Chardonnay, very oaky. And we quickly realized, that we're not doing ourselves and our vineyards injustice by that model, and changed. So in my 20 years, I think there's been a lot more focus on expression. You mentioned Evan Sadi earlier on. I think Evan and Adi and all those guys in Swartland, I think they basically sparked this revolution, not only for the winemakers in Swartland, but I think it's spilled over to the rest of the wine industry. How we pride ourselves, that I don't want to try and make a Californian Chardonnay or a Barossa style Shiraz. I want to make Constantia wines. It's a Constantia Chardonnay, it's a Constantia white blend. And there's a lot more individuality, a lot more expression, a lot more personality in the wines that we make today than as opposed to 20 odd years ago. So I think quite a few changes, I think, in the industry, and for Constantia over the last 20 years.
How crucial then, Boela, has that sense of change been to keeping the job that you do still fresh and alive? We see regular turnover in most wine spaces. Guys do a decade or often less and move on somewhere else for a new challenge, for a different challenge. You've stayed there. Is it the fact that things do keep changing, that your year-to-year job does take on a different aspect with every passing year, that's kept things so alive for you?
Dan, it's a good question, and I think so. Yeah, I must say it really is. I think between Flo and myself and John, we do make a really good team. It's amazing to have the backup of the CEO, and also Flo. It's also good to have a viticulturist, that's really passionate about wine, who sort of bounce ideas. So there's always something, and we still fine tune it. We're still looking at when we're replanting vineyards. Should we just sort of uproot and replant the same thing? Or is there a better place to plant? Can we improve the style and the quality of our wine? So it's ongoing. It is ongoing, and Dan, I hate to admit it in public, but we still make mistakes. It's there's stuff that we planted not too long ago that we realised, but this year we could have done it better. That's quite an expensive mistake to make, but I do think that we are getting closer to the mark we would like to be. But so it's a ever changing and evolving game. So we're having a lot of fun here.
Even the great Boela Coenradie makes the occasional mistake. I don't believe it, but he does claim it. What about from the estate side, Flo, from the change that you've seen? Obviously not quite such a lengthy period of time, but a farm by definition is a space in flux. What has changed for you, and what's been the most exciting part of managing that change?
Dan, you know what? I'm here about now 11 years, but when I started here, I'm the young kid in the block, and so Boela, myself, and John actually talked to us, and he said we must make it work. What can we do different? And we can't really change the weather, and nature is nature, but we actually, what we made it our, and more important of all, it's a team. Like Boela said, it's a team, and we concentrate on the soil, and we want to make the soil more alive. And to be quite honest with you, one of them mentioned the word sustainable, and it's what we left behind for our kids' kids. And what we do with the soil is we try, as I said, we try to make the soil alive. And how do you do that? So what we were playing a lot with different cover crops, for instance, like we were making combinations of cover crops like Ceradellas, for instance, radish. We also got lupins and bar power. And what is interesting about this, if you take like a radish, this huge white carrot that grows in the soil, it breaks the soil and you aerate your soil, for instance. And when this plant dies eventually, it forms a lot of biomass. And what is biomass? That's food for your soil. And it binds nutrients. It actually suppresses pests. And lastly, it's actually one of these things that we needed. And from my side, to help to bring the best grapes to the cellar is definitely doing something about our soil in the vineyards.
And it's the soil that leads to the wine that we are tasting this evening. We're going to try 3 wines. I've got the white, which is called Boela at the moment, the Governor's Reserve. I've got the red of the same, and then the famous Groot Constantia, which prompts my final question, John, before we go into the trying of the wine itself and the highlight that is certain to be, and that is that sense of history. It is spoken of a lot, but it's certainly worth referencing. There are 1 or 2 rather well-known people who've liked some of your wine in the past.
Yeah, we were very well exposed in those early years. This was the development of Groot Constantia into a tourist attraction. It's not a modern thing. It's an age-old thing, and the estate was already very, very well exposed to tourism in those early years. And it happens to be that Louis Philippe, the King of the French, was one of our clients. Napoleon, when he was in exile in St. Helena, he was fed some of our wines. Those are, I would say, probably the most prominent people that drank Groot Constantia wine. A French king to have ordered wine from an African wine estate 3 times that's a major achievement.
It was done with good reason, though, because it is a fine and established example of the greatness of South African wine, which leads me to wonder, Boela, how much, particularly when you first started off, how much pressure was there? Here you've got South African wine that's been shipped off for centuries to French kings and drunk in the highest echelons of European society. And now here's Boela Gerber, who's arrived in Constantia with the mantle of continuing this proud tradition. Was it just ever so slightly terrifying?
Yeah, there's a saying, they say fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So I probably didn't realize what the hell I was getting myself into then. But I'm joking. It was terrifying. I'm not going to lie to you. It was quite a. We had a CEO at the time, Dr. David de Villiers, and I remember just sort of during the harvest we had a meeting, and he said to me, "Listen, it's like sort of it's great history and legacy. It all depends on you, so please don't mess it up." I was actually terrified. So but. I know, so it did come with a bit of pressure.
All right. Well, you've handled it effortlessly, and to the surprise, I think, of nobody. You continue to deliver. It is yet another harvest, another vintage. 2018, the 2 blends we're drinking from. Tell me about 2018 as a year in Constantia.
I can't remember. Flo, can you remember 2018? Huh? I can't remember So 2018 was that was the last year of what do you call it? That was day 0, if I remember correctly. Came in 2018. So 2015, 16, 17, and 18 was the four dark years. From a winemaking point of view. It's obviously it didn't have enough rains in the winter again, but the summer itself was it wasn't as hot as 16, for instance, but it was still warm and dry. Interesting enough, we believe that the real drought effect only hit us a couple of years later. There was a bit of a cumulative knock-on effect that we only experienced 1920. But from a quality point of view, 2018 was actually really good. In the relative cool, wet area like Constantia, the warmer, dry years are often pretty good. So yeah, so from that point of view, 2018 was good. I don't know, Flo, can you remember what happened in 2018?
The growing season in the spring was actually very cool, but dry. And what we realized over the years, any viticulturist will tell you that a vineyard doesn't like wet feet. So the drought was actually very good for us. Right through December was good, even January was very good, and it wasn't that hot. So it was actually a long growing period. We had 1 or 2 hot days in Jan, but nothing serious. But, for these longer hanging period is very good for the fruit to form. And you don't lose your assets. You keep a very nice asset while you're building your sugar blocks. So I think it was a very good year, to be quite honest with you. Boela was mentioning about 16 was, 14 for me was a horrible year because we had lots of rain towards the end of this season. And like when you got these heat waves, you don't know, on red varietals, you start breaking open your canopy, because we're a cool climate area to let sunlight into the vine, and then you got a problem. So luckily for 18, the canopy was open for the sun to get in, but it wasn't that hot.
So
I just want to mention something else about 2018. You have to remember, I was a young father at the time. I had a 6-month-old and a 19-month-old baby at home for the 2018 harvest. So I can't really remember a lot what happened in the winery in 2018.
From experience I have with winemakers, it generally means you spend more time in the cellar than usual to try and avoid changing nappies and midnight runs for feeding. How does all this translate into the wine? Well, let's find out. The first of the wines we're trying is the Governor's Reserve. Tell us, Boela, what is in this wine and what makes it special for you?
So just a bit of background about the Governor's Reserve white. I remember when I started working here at Groot Constantia, we had I think actually when Jean started a year later, we introduced a white blend called Sauvignon Blanc Semillon. So obviously Sauvignon Blanc is really important for us here at Groot Constantia. It's the whole valley. I think nearly half of all the vineyards in Constantia is planted to Sauvignon Blanc. So Sauvignon Blanc is an important variety for the Constantia Valley. But we had a dry white wine at the time, Sauvignon Blanc Semillon. And I still remember a few of the wine writers, Christian Eads and his late father, Harold Eads, were two of them that said, "But listen here, mate, this dry wine is actually a spectacular wine, but you just sort of, just add some value to the wine." So we played for quite a few years, played with a bit of barrel fermentation and sort of tried various blends until we got round about 2007, 2008, I think, was the first year that we released the reserve when we felt comfortable that we've got a handle on this wine. It's still for me one of the more nerve-wracking wines to make. So this is I can't remember, but I think we're normally looking at about 60% Semillon and 40% Sauvignon. It is barrel fermented. It's relatively small volume. We're looking at about 2,500 to 3,000 bottles a year. So just below 3,000 bottles a year. So it's quite a small volume. Which allows us to release a 2018 white wine, a 4-year-old white wine is quite bold. It's not a young, fresh, sort of that primary driven Sauvignon Blanc wine at all. What we are looking for is something that's a bit more textured and a bit more palate weight. So the Sauvignon Blanc and the Semillon, like I said, around about 60 Semillon, 40 Sauvignon. It's barrel fermented, but it's large format, so we don't want to make another Chardonnay. So we use larger formats, 500 liter barrels and more older barrels to reduce the impact of the oak, but you still get that barrel fermentation, that bit of oak on the wine. And then we leave it in barrel for a year before we bottle it, and then leave it in bottle for another 2 or 3 years before we release it, which is the nerve-wracking part, because the wine that you bottle is very different. 2 years in bottle really changed the whole profile of the wine. So for me, it's a leap of faith. You need to sort of a bit of experience to know if you bottle it like this, it's going to age like that, and that should be the product when you release the wine in 2 or 3 years time. So it's Semillon Sauvignon Blanc, barrel fermented, and if you smell the wine, it's there's some honey and some lanolin and some elderflower and a bit of beeswax. There's a lot of complexity. For me, this is it's more of a cerebral wine. It's not a in your face showy style wine. But what I do like about this wine is every time you pick up the glass and you smell it, you get something else on it. So I really enjoy this style of wine. You see this one aged beautifully. You can open some of the first vintages 15 years later, and they're still singing. So so that's our Governess White Semillon Sauvignon Blanc blend.
It's also got the advantage of just that extra little bit of time in bottle, which has not hurt at all. What about the conversation flow that you have with your winemaker, particularly with a wine like this, where there is a balance? You've got to work out how much of one, how much of the other. How interactive is this process? How much information are you giving to Boela to help him decide what's going to go in to make this wine?
Jan, in Constantia, Sauvignon Blanc is very forgiving. It can handle anything. It loves the wind, and it doesn't bother. It just doesn't want a lot of heat. So the natural organic acids in the wine, the winemaker can't shout at nobody because it comes naturally, and it's very forgiving. But the problem lies with the Semillon. I remember my first year on the farm, I ran into the cellar and I said to Boela, please come and help me because there's something wrong with the Semillon. And he said, what is it? I said, it's surely it's a white varietal and everything is pink. And Boela said, hallelujah, that's exactly what it's supposed to look like.
And it's led to another example of what's fast becoming a real trademark of Constantia. Jean, from a marketing perspective, from selling not just for Constantia, but selling Constantia as a whole, how much focus is there on getting not just a great wine like this out, but getting the message to people that the Sauvignon Semillon is, as I think a lot of people are now calling it in the industry, the classic Constantia white blend?
Yeah, Dan, Semillon is sort of, it's a swear word. The moment people see Semillon on a label, they just steer away from it. I don't know what it is, but we had a product called Semillon Sauvignon. It's a blended wine, but it really didn't took off the way we wanted it to take off. When we introduced this blend, we decided we're not really going to advertise the fact that it's Semillon, or mainly Semillon. And that's where the name Governor's Reserve came from. It's to partner the red blend. It's the flagship on the white side, while the Governor's on the red side is the flagship, both Bordeaux blends. And that's our focus. These two are the icebreakers. They are supposed to really pull up the Groot Constantia image. And I think they do it very well.
Well, let's go to the other of those two doing such a good job, and that is the red. We'll introduce us to the 2018 blend. I know it's a standard Bordeaux blend minus the Malbec for 2018. Talk to us about how you put this one together and what it's saying to us at the moment.
Dan, just a couple of things before we talk about this wine. It's interesting. You asked Flo, what happened for the white wine when we make up the blend. But it is quite interesting. I do think it is really important, when to have a winemaker in the vineyard and to have a viticulturist in the winery. So I do spend a lot of time, every morning, before it gets too hot, between 7 and 9, 10ish. Spend some time with Flo in the vineyard doing sampling, and then obviously then when it gets too hot, I duck. I head to the winery. But then equally so, when we make up the blends, all the varietal blends, Flo is part of it. So when we taste all the components, I think it's important that the viticulturists also see what the components, all the different parcels look like in the cellar after 12 or 15 months. So Flo is very much part of when we make up the final blend. He's very much part of the team that tastes and judge all the components and also decide on the final blend. So I think that he can also see, if some of the components don't really show as we would like, then he goes back, and sort of brainstorm with the consultants and then see how we can change that, pruning techniques or canopy management. So it really makes the job in the winery a lot easier if Flo fixes all those little niggles in the vineyards already. So the Governor's Reserve is Cabernet driven. I think, like I said, we've replanted All the vineyards. When I arrived here, there was a bit of virus on the farm, and we really battled with some of the Cabernets. But I must say now, with clean varietals, clean Cabernets, clean Cabernet Francs, there are some major components. So it's definitely Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc driven. Merlot is definitely that adds a bit of a layer in the Petit Verdot, small bits and pieces. But Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc is definitely spearheading this blend. The most of the wines are actually quite drinkable in their youth, but we do make the Governor's Reserve. And Flo can also testify. When we make up the Governor's Reserve every year, we don't make something that's showing now. We want a wine that's a bit more tighter, it's a bit more reined and a bit more structured, maybe slightly abrasive in its youth. But if you have the space and the patience and the willpower actually to put it down for a couple of years, you'll definitely be rewarded. So I do think that the 2018 is drinkable as it is. But Jean launched the Vintage Vault, where we release wines, around about 15 years plus, between 15 and 20 years old. Wines we re-release, small volumes, just to show people what older wines look like, if it's been set out properly in our aging facility. And that is when those wines really show, the 05, 06 Cabernets at the moment, those wines are drinking beautifully. So that is, I do appreciate that most of the wines will be consumed relatively young, but we also try to offer something, if there is somebody that's investing and would like to settle it for a few more years, but definitely will be rewarded.
As you say, there is still some tightness to a wine that has a long journey ahead of it, but that's because the master craftsman behind it has directed it as such. Have patience, and you shall be rewarded. Let's head back to Flo just for a prelude to our final wine, and the Groot Constantia. The history is remarkable. The 1821 bottles that have sold for so much of late. On big auctions, the people who've been drinking it over the years. What from the terroir, from the conditions at Groot Constantia Flo, allow a wine this special to be created?
Dan, the thing with the Muscat, it's a bit of a spoiled varietal. Everybody will tell you, it's very tough. The skin is very tough. It can last. It doesn't rot easily. It don't get easily attacked by Botrytis cinerea, but it's fussy. I don't want to use the word lady here, but it needs north-facing slopes. That's what it actually wants on very, very good soils. So some of the best soils, we planted this Muscat Franquinha. And you know what? The problem with this is the hanging time is extremely long, because Boela wants it in the cellar at a certain degrees Belin. So for our viticulturists, we don't always understand all the mathematical the maths behind this. So we pick it on color. So a green berry is too green. Yellow is almost there. So we want this dark tan brown berry. But to get that, you have to go through the vineyards time after time. The French got a word, I think, triche, that you go through a vineyard. So yeah, we go through it about 3 times, and we do a berry picking. So we take the bunch in your hand, and you take it berry by berry. So it can get quite frustrating. So we can start early, like end of Feb, and we will finish probably some years like beginning of May. Hopefully not this year. But yeah, it's, as I said, it's a beautiful wine, and but there's a lot of it needs a lot of attention, and not only the soil.
All right. Well, I'm giving it some attention. I actually had Boela had a bottle of 2003 Chateau Yquem yesterday as a global benchmark of dessert wine, and the best of South Africa does shape up very comfortably with the very best of France. Tell me not just about this particular vintage, but also about the challenge for you as a winemaker as making this particular style of wine.
Dan, it has got a unique style. It's a blend. If you look at the color, you can see it's this beautiful blend. Where's the white background now? It's this beautiful blend of red and white Muscat. It's about 70% white and 30% red Muscat. So theoretically, it's a rosé. Blending white and red together. And as Flo mentioned, it's not a botrytized, it's not a noble late harvest. But it's not a straw wine either. It actually desiccates on the vine, so it's a natural sweet. And yes, it definitely comes with some challenges. We pick it very ripe. The sugar is very, very high. And yeah, it's to work in the winery, you can't pump it. It's raisins, so it's difficult to move. So there's a lot of manual labor involved, and also you can't really press it. I mean, there's nothing to press out of it. So we actually ferment it on the skin, to soften it up and actually get some juice out of it. So it's really messy. We ferment the skins for about a week before you can press it. And also the high sugar, you can imagine the yeast don't really, because the sugar is a preservative in its own. So the yeast don't really want to ferment something that's like nearly 50% sugar. So it definitely has its challenges. But so that's why I must say my first attempt at Groot Constantia in 2001 wasn't particularly successful. It is a tricky style of wine to make, but I think we've got a handle on it at the moment. But yeah, we definitely pay school fees along the years.
A quick question, just to follow up. We're drinking a 2017 here. The aging of this sort of wine versus the aging of the white or the red that we've gone before, is it also something people should hang on to? Does it age differently? How does that compare?
So Dan, so obviously the three wines we're showing tonight, that's our flagship, and we our top range, and obviously we release the wines. It's relative small volumes from our business point of view. So we hold the wines back and release them when we think they are at a point where you can drink them. The rest of the range, we need to balance the business a bit better. But yeah, so the Groot Constantia, 4 or 5 years, like the white and the red, the Groot Constantia is probably a year extra in barrel. So we'll bottle the 2020 towards the end of the year, and then we keep it in bottle for another couple of years. So by the time we release it, it's definitely ready for drinking. But having said that, the sweet wines age forever. That is something, like I said earlier, sugar is a preservative, along with the alcohol. So these wines age forever. I've been very fortunate to taste some of the 1794s and 1821s quite a few years ago. And even after more than 2 centuries, those wines are still singing. So there is something magic in these sweet wines. So I think it is something that you want to buy for a special occasion, that you want to keep for 10, 20, 30 longer. The sweet one's definitely something that can age for a bit longer, and definitely. It's amazing the extra layer of complexity and sort of intensity that it requires with extra bottle aging.
It is an extraordinary time capsule, another wonderful aspect of the world of wine. In closing, because unbelievably, we're almost up with our hour with 3 fabulous guests from Groot Constantia joining me, where I am at the Pencil Club in Durban this evening. Just a quick look ahead, John. You've got 337 years behind you, and you've done them rather well. We heard about the solar project, which is fantastic. We know about the commitment to WWF and sustainable farming. Is there anything else on your horizon that is particularly exciting you about Groot Constantia at the moment?
Yeah, Dan, I think the most important thing for us at this moment is to recover from the COVID shock that we had. Things are looking very positive at this moment. We're very exposed to the tourism market, so things are very positive. And for future years, we have a massive responsibility of keeping this farm afloat and to use it and expose it to the public, the broader public, South Africans, people visiting from overseas, because this is a huge part of world wine heritage. And that's our responsibility. And for future, we want to expose it. We want to show people the extraordinary history and extraordinary wine history that Africa and South Africa has to offer. That will be our focus. And you've seen the dedication tonight in just 2 of my team members. that will be our aim for the future. In what way we will do it specifically, it doesn't matter. We will find a way of exposing this magnificent heritage that's been entrusted to us.
Which is what you've been doing now for over 3 centuries, and it continues in very safe hands indeed. Guys, thank you. It's been not just a wonderful introduction to some new vintages of well-established wine, but also a fabulous history lesson and some very welcome insight into one of the most influential estates we have in South Africa. So thank you for safeguarding it, because I think we all feel as though Groot Constantia is a piece of ours, such as its sense of history. Keep making wonderful, wonderful wine. Keep looking after a fabulous estate. And thank you so much for being part of the show this evening.
Thanks for having us, Dan.
So there we go. John Adair, the CEO, Flo Bjerkes, the viticulturalist and estate manager, and Boela Coenradie, one of South Africa's finest winemakers, 22 years and counting, making magic at Groot Constantia. It's an estate many have been to, but if for some reason you haven't, go and soak up some of that history, get a sense of the aesthetic, and gee, it's a lovely part of the world to visit. And go and try some of Boela's wines, which win all the awards they do for a very, very good reason indeed. That wraps us up for this evening's show. Big thank you to the Groot Constantia team. Thank you too to Michelle and Goals and the team at the Pencil Club for being our hosts here in Durban this evening. I am dashing off to catch a flight and just about be home in time for dinner in Johannesburg this evening. And I will see you again on Thursday when we celebrate Shiraz as National Shiraz Day touches down. Enjoy the rest of your evening. This has been Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay, and keep drinking and celebrating South African wine. Goodbye. To join the Pick n Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.